Hello, and welcome to my amazing guest, Jamie McAnsh. Welcome, Jamie.
Hello, hello.
And today I'm doing an episode of A Life in a Day where I talk to fascinating and interesting people like Jamie about how dyslexia impacts them on a normal everyday day, from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep, or at important points in between. So here's the thing, Jamie. Tell us, when you wake up in the morning, how does dyslexia affect you?
Well, the funny thing is actually, first thing in the morning, it genuinely doesn't. Unless Charlotte and I, obviously we're married, but we're also business partners. And sometimes Charlotte will wake up and she'll have all these wonderful ideas about the business, and she'll just download some of these amazing ideas to me. And that is at that point that my dyslexia kicks in and goes, I can't take this amount of information. So I work very much off lists. So downloads just don't work. The other thing that it affects me with, as you very well know, is I cannot tell the time by a clock face. And actually in our dining room where we eat our breakfast, we have a clock. It's the only clock face we have in the house. And I constantly have to say to Charlotte, what time is it? So that I know what time I need to be booked in or logged in for my next meeting or however my day is going to go. And obviously it's all governed by time. So yeah, those two main elements first thing in the morning can and do sometimes have an effect on my day. I used to go for walks with Charlotte as well. I used to walk the dog in the morning, which I had to then stop because Charlotte thinks differently to me, right? So her brain works differently to mine. So we would go for a walk and she would just like mulling over all these ideas, what she's going to do for the day, how it's going to work, what she's aiming for, etc., etc. Again, download onto me, at which point I'd be having a complete and utter mind catastrophe. So by the time I actually got home, I was more stressed than I was when I went out. So it actually worked out that it was more functional, I think is probably the word, for me not to go on the walk with Charlotte and actually for me to stay at home and have my own little quiet space. So yeah, it does. It's little strange little characteristics that affects me, but that's first thing in the morning anyway.
That is fascinating, isn't it? And because we're assuming that Charlotte is not dyslexic herself. And
No, I don't think so.
So has a different way, presumably, of processing information. And I'm hoping to speak to her at some point to get the mirror image of this situation, because it's interesting, isn't it, how people work together? Because you have to, don't you? And the time thing in relationships and in businesses can be quite important.
Yeah, cause it's funny because Charlotte is in a lot of ways the pole opposite of me. So so timing is a great one. I may not be able to tell the time very well, but I do very much have to stick by time. So if I say, right, we're going to leave the house at 2 p.m, then I'm expecting to be like driving off the driveway at 2 p.m. But Charlotte lives on her own time level. So she has her own time and it's usually running about 10 minutes later than my time. So by the time we're actually leaving 10 minutes later, I've just wound myself up. And I'm like, come on, we've got to go. It doesn't matter if we've given ourselves an extra hour traveling time. It just really doesn't matter. Like if I say we've got to leave at 2 o'clock, it's like we've got to leave at 2 o'clock. The other thing that has a major impact on life in general is my horrendous ability or inability to remember names. So if I have people in the room with me and I just forget their names, or I call them something different, and even if I know their name, I'll still call them something different. And a good example of that is I was actually doing a podcast show with two guests and they were both called Richard, and for some unknown reason we just don't know why, I called one of them Murphy, to the point where we were like, who's Murphy? I was like, I don't know, who's Murphy? So, you know, it is, and it's laughable and it's jokeable, and I'm quite happy to kind of laugh about it, and I've become quite known for the fact that I get this sort of stuff wrong. The trick is not to be too embarrassed by it, because otherwise you just end up spending your whole life embarrassed, and I haven't got time for that. So like, I've been working with a young lad called Leo. He's absolutely brilliant, and last night I called him something completely different, and I don't even know why I did that. So, you know, it's little things like that, the little characteristics that people don't realize comes with dyslexia. You know, yeah, my reading and my writing abilities are not, you know, it's not the same as everyone else. I mean, that's obvious. I've also dyscalculate, so I also struggle with numbers, which is great. Love that fact of my life. But it's all the other little characteristics that you don't see or don't understand or don't realize, like overwhelm. And I do live with overwhelm quite often.
And what do you do about it? How do you recognize it, and what do you do?
Well, actually, funny enough, so I got sort of diagnosed, and I wasn't really formally diagnosed. I was informally diagnosed in my sort of mid to late 20s. And it did make sense why I couldn't read and write very well. But that was it. It was just like, oh, you're dyslexic. You've got, you know, all of the symptoms of dyslexia when you read it, and even how words look to me and how different fonts look to me. And I get away with it in restaurants because all the restaurant menus are always weird fonts that I can never really read. So I always just ask the waitress what they recommend. And then I just eat that. So I've eaten some real wild and wonderful foods over the years. But one of the things that I've lost where I was going with this. So we started off on fonts, and we started off on, right, so this is it. This is where I am, right? So what was the question again?
The question was, how do you recognize overwhelm, and what do you do about it?
Absolutely right. So the funny thing is, even though I got diagnosed quite later on in my life, I've actually learned more in the last 8 months about myself than I have in the last sort of 40 years of my life. And actually that has a lot to do with your good self, actually, Guy, because even though you're not dyslexic, you are an expert in this field. And sometimes, you know, if I had an injury or a disability, and I'm disabled, as you know, I use a wheelchair. So, you know, when I got my disability, I researched it, but I also spoke to experts, and experts told me why this happens, or why that happens, or why I have this issue because of this spinal injury, and all the connections that come with it. And then all of a sudden you just start to understand, actually, it's just my disability. It's just how it is. And this is what I need to do to overcome and adapt it. But I've never met someone like that within the world of dyslexia until I met yourself. And then all of a sudden it's like, why do I do this, Guy? Why is this happening? What does this mean? And that's why I'm so open about talking about it, because actually all I'm doing is sharing the knowledge and the experience that actually you gave me about myself, about understanding, and it's just about that little bit of realization that there's actually, I'm not stupid, or I'm not crazy, or I'm not short-tempered. I'm actually someone who just struggles to process information, as well as a few other little characteristics. One of the other things I've noticed, and we're going on to bedtime now, is actually when I get tired, it gets worse. So all of a sudden, I'm struggling to comprehend what people are saying to me. I don't want to talk about certain subjects. The more tired I get, the less communicational I get. So the more, and I think it's like it for everybody, but as I get sort of towards the end of the day, I just want to shut down and just stop talking about day-to-day stuff that I know is going to then take time to process. So yeah, it's from morning to day, it's a journey through life. But I think with dyslexia, you just kind of have to learn different ways of coping and managing it.
It's well, you raise a very good point about the how you see yourself for people with dyslexia. I was talking to someone the other day who felt, and they're in their I don't know, 30s, so they felt that they knew they were dyslexic because of the reading writing stuff. They never ever explored it. So I was having a chat with them about these kind of associated characteristics, of which there are quite a lot, and they're variable for everybody. And they said very poignantly, oh, maybe I should just be a bit kinder to myself and less hard on myself.
Yeah.
And I thought, it's a hard enough world as it is, isn't it? With the impact of COVID and Brexit and austerity, life is tricky. If you're going to punish yourself as well for not remembering stuff and for not living up to the standards of the neurotypicals who find all this stuff so easy, then life is, well, exhausting, basically, isn't it? So
it is. It comes down to respect, though, Guy, and it's respect for yourself. Like self-respect is the pinnacle level of any respect you can give. And when you start respecting yourself, you naturally start to respect other people. When you start to respect and understand yourself, you naturally start to respect and understand other people. And it's an old analogy, before you fall in love, you need to love yourself. And that's the trick. It's not about, wandering around with a strut in your stride and going, look at me, look how great I am. It's about going, do you know what, actually, I've got perfections and imperfections. And that's not a bad thing. So it's what makes the world different. It's what makes everybody different. And it's one of the characteristics of dyslexia is actual common sense, because you've lived your life around adapting and thinking outside the box and finding new ways of doing things. And actually, I've met many neurotypical people who are incredibly academic and clever, if you like, for the choice of a better word, have got no common sense. Now, is that a different type of disability? I mean, quite frankly, I think I'd rather not be able to read and write very well and have great common sense than the other way around. But it's all about respecting who you are and what abilities you've got, and less about what disability, less punishment about what disabilities you have, because it's like that old saying, wherever there's an action, there is a reaction. And if you act unkindly to yourself, then you're going to react unkindly back to yourself as well. And that then just becomes a very, very hard circle to chase in. And I try to respect myself. I know I forget things. I know that if I don't write it down, it's going to go. I know that if someone throws a load of information at me, I'm going to get overwhelmed. But now I'm confident and comfortable to go, look, I can't take all this information in. So why don't you just chuck it in an email for me? Or why don't you just write it down on a list? Which is quite ironic, considering reading is one of my difficulties. But at least if it's on a list, I can take my own time to process it. So it's adapted. Something else I'm not very good at, Guy, is finding directions. And so I use a sat nav. I'm also profoundly deaf, so I use hearing aids. I can't walk very well, so I use a wheelchair. It's about using the tools that are made available to you to make your life the easiest it can be without punishing yourself. I don't punish myself because I can't run up a set of stairs. So why should I punish myself because I can't remember something that someone threw at me 3 weeks ago? So yeah, it's about respecting yourself.
It's that is a wonderful point. And it's interesting, isn't it, that you've thrown up all these challenges that exist for people with dyslexia and for you. And yet you set up a successful business, and which is thriving, isn't it? So it shows, doesn't it, that you don't have to be good at spelling, good at managing all these things to be successful, to, I guess, get some pleasure out of what you do.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I've got some great business mentors that are around me, and I'm going to mention Mark Wright from Climb Online. Mark Wright won The Apprentice in 2014. He runs one of the UK's most successful marketing companies, and his business partner is Lord Alan Sugar, and yet Mark is dyslexic. And he runs several multi-million-pound businesses. But what is his idea? What is an idea of success? He's doing what he wants to do. He's living his dream, and that is what makes him successful. And that's what makes me successful. It's not my ability or inabilities. It's I'm doing something that I genuinely love to do. And actually, the funny thing is about running my own company is it's easier to run my own business than it is to work for someone else. And I think this is something that I think it's a really good place to put this point in. Is I run my own company, so if I make a mistake, it's on me, right? But I surround myself with people that are better than me at certain things, right? And that's the key. That is the top tip: is surround yourself with people that are better than what you're doing, right? And so I'm very, very privileged to have that. But also, to run your own company, you do it how you want it. You're not trying to please someone, you're not trying to impress anybody, you're just being you. And it's actually for the first time in my life, and I'm 40 now, that I can sit down and go, I'm doing a job I love, but I'm doing a job that actually allows me to be me, Jamie McAnsh, with all of my warts and mishaps. You know, I am Jamie McAnsh, and that is what I love about running my own company. And it's not easy, right? It's not easy, but the rewards far outweigh the negatives.
Do you know, that is such a wonderful note upon which to finish, isn't it? That I've got to say, thank you so much, Jamie, for sharing those insights, because it was a good collection, isn't it, of the challenges and the frustrations, and on the other side, isn't it, if you can get it to work together. And you're absolutely right, the key thing has got to be that self-respect. And so thank you ever so much. It's been wonderful, and I better let you get back to your business to keep it ticking over, and maybe we can do this again sometime in the future. So thank you, Jamie McAnsh.
Anytime, anywhere, anytime, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I absolutely love having you as part of my life and working with you. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Cheers, Jamie. Thank you for taking the time to watch today's video. If you found this video useful, then why not take a look at this one? I'll see you in my next video. Bye for now.